it's so great that you're on this show now, given its pride, given everything that's going on, and given that you're running for Congress. But let's just start there at the outrage, whether fake or real, around the LGBTQ plus community, around drag shows. Like, where do you, I've always said I feel like this is a last gasp of like the right trying to grasp at straws for things to get upset about. But how do you, and of course being part of the community, how do you read it? How is it hitting the community? Does it feel as desperate from the inside as it looks from the outside? Or yeah, I just your thoughts on the right.
It didn't until recently, to be honest with you. And I don't know if that's because I'm in the bubble that is known as Los Angeles, but it didn't really feel that way until quasi recently.
Yeah.
You know, I did kind of think, oh, this is just like a small sort of just a small group that is just being very, very loud. Here's the thing. I think that there are some people who really believe what they were saying in terms of anti-LGBTQIA rhetoric. And I think that there are those who listen to those kinds of people and attach, you know, latch onto that sort of moral panic surrounding LGBTQIA issues. And most of it is based in conspiracy. It's baseless in most regards. And it's scary because everyday folks are having to take the brunt of it in LGBTQIA communities.
Absolutely. And you experienced that yourself, you know, just the other week outside of a Glendale school board meeting where there was a vote to recognize June as Pride Month. There was a straight brawl, instigated by like anti-LGBTQ nut jobs, right wingers, and even Proud Boys. Let's just talk about the infiltration of the Proud Boys into this hate movement, and like maybe just briefly what happened, and then like what have you been seeing even around a bubble like Los Angeles, because Los Angeles is a bubble, but yet we had these instances and we've had others.
You know, that's, I think, what has been really scary about it. Not to say that, oh, we're in California, we deserve safety. We deserve safety and acceptance and tolerance and equity everywhere. But you don't expect these kinds of things in the heart of Southern California. You know, I was just talking about how we just started having anti-LGBTQIA legislation being introduced on the state level here in California. And even though some folks are saying, oh, well, you know, nothing to worry about, you know, that's not going to pass. You know, AB 1314, which was a bill that would have had, you know, Riverside area school districts, it would require them to report to parents within 3 days if a student comes out and identifies as transgender. And you have to think about why a student feels more comfortable coming out to officials in a school district about being transgender or gay or lesbian or bi than their own parents. And oftentimes that happens because LGBTQIA abuse happens within the home. And so that's why youth are not necessarily immediately willing to come out to their parents, because they hear and they see the way that the way that their parents feel about queer people. I actually was in a similar boat when I came out in the early 2000s. I was nervous to come out to my parents because I had kind of heard a few, you know, off-kilter comments, and it made me feel not very safe coming out. I have very supportive parents now. They love me to death. They are behind me entirely. Anyways, that's besides the point. But we are seeing this kind of thing in California, and we're seeing it right here in the district that I'm running in. I'm running in California's 30th congressional district, which is a very large and diverse district. It includes West Hollywood, Silver Lake, Echo Park, the Hollywood Hills, Burbank, Glendale, and it goes all the way north to the LA Forest. Huge district. I was reached out to by folks that live in Glendale because they were concerned that there has been so much anti-LGBTQIA rhetoric happening in the district. I recently attended a meeting that was presented by Gallus, which is the Gay and Lesbian Armenian Society based out of Glendale. And somebody there had mentioned the uptick in anti-LGBTQIA rhetoric. And when I tried to dig into it a couple of months ago, there wasn't really a whole lot of information. Most of the outlets that were reporting on it were either specifically LGBTQIA outlets or sort of, you know, minor news outlets. But it kind of blew up within the past month. And I ended up having a meeting with several parents that are living in Glendale who have children in the school district. Now, these parents are, some of them are queer, some of them have queer kids, some of them are just allies who want to see LGBTQIA inclusion in Glendale, in LA County, in California, and beyond. Now, what's really bizarre about this whole thing is that I'm not really sure why Glendale has specifically been targeted by these anti-LGBTQIA far-right groups, such as the Proud Boys, such as Gays Against Groomers, because the Glendale School District is completely within the bounds of California state law, which requires LGBTQIA education. They're not going above or beyond or below what is required by the states. But for some reason, this district is specifically being targeted. And the only thing that the school board was voting on a few weeks ago was to acknowledge June as Pride Month. This is about as mild as you can get because it's already recognized on a city, county, state, and federal level.
That's what and yet folks are still out there and there are Proud Boys instigating what I'm assuming are like, a couple of random radicalized parents who've watched too much Fox News. And now they're, I mean, maybe it was like a wake up call that had just how real and how serious some of the like anti-gay, hate groups are. But
yeah, it was scary because, we showed up a few hours early because we knew that these opposition groups were showing up, and we wanted to make sure to be able to get into the meeting to leave public comments. You can't just flood a public meeting with, alt-right hate groups who many of them don't even live in the district or have kids in the district or any relation to the district. And while we were in there, we got notice that the meeting, we had to go in recess and nobody was allowed to leave the building. We were on lockdown because of violence happening out front that was instigated by the Proud Boys and anti-LGBTQIA groups. We had to be escorted out of the back of the building. It's just so out there and bizarre to me.
Yes. And we've seen also, I believe it was outside the Wee Spa where Proud Boys were protesting and had been multiple times because supposedly there was a trans client and just an entire like whether or not that was true, like it doesn't matter, obviously it is their right. And I think the spa even said like we have a number of transgender clients, we welcome them, blah blah blah. So there have been these like weird little instances. Again, LA you think is potentially progressive and votes blue mostly, but it is a massive city and there are hate groups and radicalized parents or randos as well. I mean, I have a lot to ask, a lot of different like directions we could take this, but I do want to talk about you as as someone who's involved in politics, as someone who is on the city LA city official and the neighborhood council. Like what is your role now and why do you want to up it? Why are you running for Congress? Tell me about like maybe just your political origin, and then I want to know about your drag origin.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it kind of brief. And actually, my political origin and my drag origin are a little intertwined. But I started doing drag in 2015, and I started getting. Let me back up and say I've always had an interest in political and social causes, in civics. I've always wanted to be involved in one way or another. When I started doing drag in 2015, things seemed relatively calm in the land. And then all of a sudden, Trump is elected late 2016, early 2017, and we just see this weird, just sort of explosion of right-wing, really awful rhetoric against particular groups within the US, whether they be people of color, queer people, immigrants, it's very much the othering of people. And it really inspired me to get more involved. And so I started doing a number of political performances where I would, satirize some of the villains that were in the Trump administration, such as Kellyanne Conway, Betsy DeVos, Melania. And a big part of the reason that I did this was not just for entertainment purposes, but for educational purposes, because I started to realize that not everybody knew who these figures were. And they're proactively making our lives worse, due to their rhetoric and passing that on to their following. And so
was that well received? Drag is a little bit like stand-up, and I'm a stand-up comic. And so like, sometimes people want to go see a drag show and just like, they don't want to think about the real world. They don't want to think about what's going on. But also it is a huge opportunity to like skewer, what's going on and skewer those figures, those women you're
Totally,
talking about.
totally. It was extremely well received because I did it in sort of, again, a satirical and comedic way where I'm roasting these people, but you don't even realize in the process you're learning what's happening, within our government at that point in
Right.
time. So I started to become known as a political queen, and it got me thinking, well, why can't I actually be in politics? Why can't somebody like me be in politics, especially when my community is on the receiving end of so much political and social hate? And so I decided to run for local office right here in my neighborhood, Silver Lake. And I ran as my open, authentic, queer ass self. And they elected me. And you know what? They didn't elect me because I'm a queer person. They didn't elect me because I'm a drag queen or because I'm a trans non-binary person. They liked me because of the ideas that I wanted to bring to the table, to my neighborhood, my city, and beyond. And I think that is something to really, really remember, is that queer people are still regular people with ideas and things that are also related to the rest of the world outside of LGBTQIA issues.
Right.
Healthcare, housing, education, not specifically LGBTQIA issues, but very intersectional.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I want to, you know, Adam Schiff is currently the congressperson for
Yeah,
CA30. Massive name, huge
huge,
national recognition, of
huge.
course. My mom loves him. I'm very much trying to steer her toward Katie Porter, toward Barbara Lee, and away from Adam Schiff, who takes
Yeah.
corporate money. But how do you see doing things different? Like, how are you, where do you stand in terms of democratic politics, your issues, and sort of a progressive vision for the future?
Thank you for asking me that question because, I've had to in the past differentiate myself from the incumbent. This is my third time running for Congress. I ran in 2020, where I came in third place. I ran in 2022, where I came in second place out of 9 people, made it to the general election, got almost 30% of the vote, despite being outspent over 500-1 by Adam Schiff, who again is a darling of the Democratic Party. But getting so far on so little really showed me that people actually, they don't vote based off of who's the most popular or who has the most money. They vote based off of a value system and somebody's platform. And I'm not just out here screaming into the void saying, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I'm actually doing it right here in my community. I'm doing it right here in my neighborhood council. I've always said I want to lead with a bottom-up approach. We hear about this trickle-down effect, which is a myth, but the bottom-up effect is real. I want to see every community in this nation thrive. And the only way we can do that is with a bottom-up approach. And so I have had to differentiate myself from Schiff, and I've had a lot of uncomfortable conversations. I'm glad that I'm not running against him this year, because it is extremely difficult running against somebody who has a campaign war chest, and I don't use that pun lightly, of over $15 million. And it has been difficult, but the reasons that I decided to run against him, folks, a lot of times, folks mostly know Schiff because he was involved in the impeachment process in the January 6th committee. Prior to that, the Mueller reports. Those are sort of the ways that he has risen up within politics, national politics here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of folks don't realize is, your voting record matters. I will say this as a politician, the only thing that matters is your voting record. I stand by every vote that I have done in my local capacity. I look at Schiff's voting record and I can't stand by it. Folks don't realize that he was not only voted for, but authored a huge number of pieces of legislation that increased incarceration in the state of California, specifically amongst juveniles. That is crazy. That is disgusting to me. He has voted for every single war issue since he has been in office in the early 2000s. He voted for the Patriot Act, the war in Afghanistan, the Iraq War. His votes led to the creation of ICE, which has been devastating here in this district and across the U.S. He voted for the Saudi invasion of Yemen. And then he takes all of this money from weapons manufacturers and defense contractors. And should we be surprised that he's voting in their interests?
Right.
He's a corporate Democrat. And I think that folks don't like to think of their heroes as being corporate shills. But unfortunately, a huge part of the Democratic Party is committed to corporatism rather than the voice of the people. And I've always been committed to running for the people. I reject all sort of corporate influence, corporate PAC money, That's not what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for the neighbors like me who are struggling to afford to pay rent, healthcare, education, etc. We need economic equity.
Yeah. I love it. I think, look, I mean, that's what's messed up about Democrats and leading Democrats is there is a false idea that, well, you just have to take this awful money in order to beat the Republican. And especially here in California, we know that's BS. We know that's
Yeah.
not true. We have, this is the state that went to Bernie Sanders in the primary election in 2020. So let's remember who we are and what we can actually accomplish. I mean, I think it's great that you're going after this seat too. And I think it's incredible that you're already, this is the kind of community building and community work that, all of the squad members had been involved in from whether it's Jamal Bowman as a principal to, AOC, to even here locally in LA, people who are now thankfully changing city council from Hugo Soto Martinez to Eunices Hernandez to, Nithya Raman, all starting as grassroots organizers. So, I mean, it's like you're building with your voters directly.
Absolutely. And the fact that we are, it's so funny. I actually had to, I had to call out the LA Times a couple of months ago because they put out this article saying, here's all the politicians who are running to replace Adam Schiff. And they mentioned a state assembly member, a state senator, a school board member, a local mayor. They left me out, even though I'm a locally elected official who has my third time running. And I came in second place last year, losing only to the incumbent who is now not seeking re-election. So it's very clear to me that they don't want to acknowledge that we actually have a really amazing chance of winning this election and representing Los Angeles and Washington as with progressive representation, not representation.
I mean, let's not talk about how much that would trigger and freak out Congress as it's currently comprised of. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.